everybody, my name's Steve, I'm the British Railroader and welcome to my model railroad room. Now today I want to talk about ditch lights. Now this video is actually kind of a bit of a re-presentation of two videos that I've already made. I'm just going to edit down slightly about fitting working ditch lights to HO scale models. Now, as all of you know, real locomotives in the United States invariably have ditch lights fitted. Some of them were fitted retrospectively because they were built without them before they were mandated. Some of them have been built with them in place, like a lot of the passenger locos that we see today. Now, in model form, not all locomotives that should have ditch lights have actually had them fitted. And this is because a lot of model manufacturers like Atlas, Athearn, Bachmann, etc. will quite often release models based on older molds that haven't been updated. Now things are changing, and you look at the new Atlas models, even the more basic ones, obviously everything from Athearn Genesis and some of the Athearn Ready to Roll are now, where appropriate, coming fitted with ditch lights, and they tend to be working ditch lights as opposed to just cosmetic ones. But what I wanted to do was go through the fitting of two different styles of ditch lights. Now the first one that we're going to look at is what I did to my New York and Atlantic GP38 number 261, where they're mounted on the front pilot, sort of above on the anti-climber. That's probably the more tricky, I suppose, of the two ways of fitting ditch lights. The second part of the video is a representation of one of the episodes that I did when I was detailing my CSX GP38-2 number 2790. This one had the ditch lights right on front of the pilot, as you can see here from this real life CSX locomotive that I saw whilst I was in Pittsburgh. Probably easier to fit. And then what I will do lastly is link in the description and make as the video that gets suggested for you is how to wire in the ditch lights. So I just thought it'd be nice just to bring all of this stuff together so that if you're looking about how to fit ditch lights to HO scale locomotives, it's all in one place. Okay, down here on the workbench, we have my model GP38 that I got for Christmas. You can see lots of wires coming out the bottom. That's the headlights and rear lights that have all been wired up. Wanted to get that done before I moved on to the ditch lights. Now, as I explained earlier, the ditch lights are 3D printed items from CMR Products, whose website address I will put below. They're just plain round pilot mounted ones that go flat on the pilot, which we're using for the rear. Here, I've only got one on here, but I have got enough. These are the ones that sit on top of the pilot, and they're going to be used at the front. Just to show you the different examples, these ones are ones that are used, I think, by Norfolk Southern Railroad. And as you can see, they've got additional parts on them, which I think are some of the electrical connections on the train. But these are just plain plastic, 3D printed plastic moldings that I have bought. You can make your own. One thing that I've done is made my own using bits of, this is Evergreen number 224 plastic tubing. And basically what you do is you take a little slice off the end of the tube. That's a few millimeters thick. That gives you your basic, I show you here, this is one of the model ones, but as you can see, whoops, almost lost it. That's almost just a, can't even do it, keeps falling. That's just like a piece of plastic tubing. So you can cut these, paint them, and use those. You can even mount them on flat bits of plastic to do the ones that are mounted on top of the pilot and not just against them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the rear. So down here, as you can see, just here we have one of the headlight lenses. Now I simply painted it whilst it was on. So whilst it was like that, I painted it on the sprue. So I've just painted it a gunmetal colour and then taken it off of the sprue. And all you have to then do at this stage is glue it in position on the locomotive. So let's zoom out again. And literally, if you look on the locomotive, just here, here's one I did earlier, and that's literally just with a dab of super glue put into position. So I'm just going to very quickly put the other one in position, and then I'll show you how to fit the LEDs. Okay, so number 2 is glued on now, and as you can see, they're just sitting there. And I can remember when I first started fitting ditch lights, I thought, oh, well, we can just have them as dummies. But no, I can't possibly do that. So what we're going to now do is drill a hole. And we're going to take our drill with, that's a 0.4 millimeter drill bit, and we're going to drill just through the center of the light. So this is a hollow casting, and we're going to drill through the pilot beam to the chassis underneath. So once I've done that, we'll then fit the LED. Okay, so the LEDs that I'm using, I believe they're called 0402 is the size number. They're readily available on eBay. They're micro LEDs and they're pre-wired. And these ones are warm white. And they basically, they come pre-wired with a resistor. However, you do have to chop the resistor off if you want to stand any chance of threading it through a 0.4 millimeter hole. And you literally, as you can see here, they just thread in and the LED just pulls in and sits in there. And what I'm going to do is very quickly just test to see if that LED is working. Okay, so using my homemade LED tester as shown in last video, that's working. And then the next thing is going to be securing that in place. But I don't do that until everything is fitted and working. And I'll show you how to do that later in the video. So we'll do the other one and then we'll move to the front ditch lights. Okay, moving to the front ditch lights. So as you can see, these mouldings, first thing I did was painted the front. So that's painting the flat bit at the back, which I painted green to go with the locomotive, and then the outer casing I painted silver. Now these come off of the backing quite easily, and you are left with your little moulding like that. There will be some on the back, some rough bits, so it's best to get a file, which of course I don't have to hand. Oh, there it is. So you get your file and just smooth the back of it like so. And I'm just going to place that down there. Get our drill. And again, a 4.4 millimeter hole through it. This one's quite simple. So we get your LED and just like the other one, we just thread the wires through like so. Oops, and pull that tight in. So the LED is actually sitting in there. Now with this one we are going to secure it, so we're going to bend the wires down at the back to go to the foot of this. Now I don't know if you can see, I'm going to just make this a bit bigger. Sorry if it's a bit blurry, but if you can just see the profile, there is a definite bottom to that.
where it will sit on the surface of the pilot. And what we're going to do, if I turn that over and get that back into focus, just bear with me. And oops, no, not quite. Hang on, there we go. So I'm going to glue those wires in that position against the back of this, and then we're going to paint over them. And just over there is one that I prepared earlier, so we'll get that and show it to you. So here's the one I prepared earlier, and if I turn this over, you can see the wires are on there and they're painted green. So what we're going to do is we're going to mount this on the Loco Pilot. If I just bring that out. So getting lots of wires tangled up here, but there we go. So on this goes just here. So we're going to drill a hole down through the chassis. So it needs to go back a little bit because you can see there's a bit that juts out here. Hole through the chassis so that I can feed the wires through. And then just with a dab of super glue, we'll fit that on top. So we'll come back once I've done that. Okay, so here we have the first of the front ditch lights fitted. So that's fitted just there. I'm going to give it a bit for the glue to dry. Once the other one that I worked on a little bit earlier and the glue's dried on that, I'll paint the back and I will fit that to the other side just here. I'm just going to have a quick word with you about wiring. You can see lots of wires coming out of there. This is a DCC project. So here's my chassis. Let me just move the speakers for the moment. And actually get it in shot would help. So here is my chassis. I'm using a Soundtraxx PMP8 decoder, which is just my preferred type. And as you can see, it's already wired in for running and also for sound. Now, the lights, this terminal here and this terminal here are the negative outputs for the front and rear headlights. As you can see, I've got resistors wired in here and here. So these are the common positive returns for your lights and any other functions that you want to put on. So with the headlights, it's fairly straightforward. For the tail lights and the ditch lights, we have to use the functions. And here you've got the FX3, FX4, FX5, FX6, FX7, and FX8. And we're going to be using 4 of those. One each for the ditch lights. Now, just a word on the ditch lights. On this particular model, the dish lights don't flash. This railroad doesn't use flashing dish lights. And for that reason, the front dish lights can be wired together as one function, and the rear ditch lights can be wired together as a second function. So they will take up one of these. So the negative for both of those goes there. I will actually wire them in series so that the positive lead of one connects to the negative lead of another, of the next one. And so therefore you're then left with one positive and one negative, one to go, the positive to go here, the negative to go there. Same with the rear lights and the back ditch lights and the back rear lights, so that they can all be wired on separate functions and therefore can be controlled individually. Okay, so the lights have now all been fitted. I just show you the front of the Loco here. You can see the ditch lights in place, and same at the rear. They've all got their LEDs in place. They're working. They've been wired up. I'm sorry I didn't show you me doing the wiring, but there are some things in life that life's too short for. So what we want to do is just finally put some lenses on these ditch lights. And the way that I do that is with this stuff. It's called Glue and Glaze. It's for making windows. I believe there is a version of this available in the States, though. I'm afraid I don't know what the name is. I think it's called Crystal Clear. But I may be mistaken, but I'm sure you guys can find out. And literally what you do is you get a cocktail stick, as we call it in the UK, or a toothpick, I think you call it in America. Pick some up and basically flood the aperture. As you can see, it's gone white. And do the same with the other one. And there you go. Leave that alone for about half an hour and that will go clear. Okay, so here we are down on the workbench and we're going to fit ditch lights to 2790 just here. But first I need to talk to you about what I've used to make the ditch lights. Now I've actually attached the rear ones and one of the front ones just because it saves a little bit of time so I can demonstrate the various steps to you. But I'm just going to go very briefly through the construction. Now, I mentioned earlier on in this build that I have used some 3D printed, if I can pick the thing up, lenses. So I'm just going to bring this up to the camera and then just focus. So as you can see here, the actual lens casing is that grey plastic part, which is a 3D printed lens from CMR Products, website address below. Now I've used CMR Products a few times. They do some very, very nice bits. They will ship to the UK, but you have to contact them, send them an email because they calculate that separately. They do various different types, but they didn't do quite the right, not housing, but sort of brackets and whatever. So I've fabricated a bracket here and I'll show you very quickly how I did that. So let's just zoom back out again. There we go. Just one little tip just around ditch lights is that if you can't get hold of ditch light housing, then you can make your own ditch light housing using this. This is number 224, which is 3.2 millimeter diameter tube. And literally what you would do is slice the tube just a couple of millimeters thick, and then glue that onto whatever supporting brackets you've made up for your locomotive. And this works very, very well. I mean, this boat's a bit raggedy because I've used it for something else, but I've made ditch lights this way a couple of times. So it's just an alternative if you can't get hold of things like the CMR products or similar. So I've done this using bits of evergreen plastics. There's three types of evergreen that I've used. The first one is 264 channels, so this is 3.2 millimeters wide. That's an eighth of an inch, apparently. Sorry, guys, in America, I'm not very good with sub-inch measurements, so I tend to do everything in millimeters. But this is 264, so that's some channel. And then we've got some, let's see, the next one is 136. So this is 3.2 millimeter wide strip, but it's also 0.75 millimeters thick. So it's a thickish strip. And then I've also used some 105, which is it's very, very thin. So it's 0.25 millimeters by 2.5 millimeters wide. And I'll explain how I've used these. Let's just move these to one side. So for the front ditch lights, as you could probably see on the one I showed you, we started with a piece of the channel. Let's just zoom in a little bit on this. There we go. So I started with a piece of the channel. And then I took the thicker number 136, which is again 3.2 millimeters wide, and laminated it on top so that you've got quite a thick base there. And that turns into basically this here. So as you can see, it's channel, but it's quite thick. That was then chopped into, so this is 3.2 millimeters wide. And I've chopped it into squares, again 3.2 millimeters, so that we end up with the base that I've used on the ditch light. So as you can see, and the ditch light is literally just super glued on there.
Now, the only difference with the rear ditch lights is I took the 125 strip and then added a little laminate of the 105 strip on the back, basically leaving a gap below. So what I wanted to do was create kind of like a stepped effect, which if I show you on this one, I think you can just see that there. Let's just focus on that. But what I did was I used two strips, one on top of each other, so that you've got some thickness. And the reason for this is, and the reason for both of these, is that these ditch lights normally protrude just over the coupler cut bar. So this one straddles it, but this one just goes over the top of it at the bottom just here. Okay, so that's how I made the ditch lights. And then to fix them on, I literally got a little bit, I tend to use Gorilla super glue because it's a little bit thicker, but also gives you a little bit of working room. So we're going to take our glue on the top and on the bottom, take our loco, find where we want to place it and put it in the right place. Now I'm doing this by eye. As you can see, the other one is already in place. There we go. So that's the front ditch lights on. As you can see as well, we've got the back ones on. And the next step, once everything is dry, is to drill holes through them to take the wires. So what I've got here is a 1.7mm drill bit, and I am just going to drill through this. Now I'm just going to go through the upper part just so that I miss that coupler cut bar. And it doesn't matter which way it's angled through as long as it just goes through. As you can see, it's gone through the loco. You just focus on that, just there. So that's where the wires will go through. Okay, get rid of that. And I'll do the other side once it's dry. So the next stage is to paint the housing. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do when it comes to painting is paint the whole of the fitting black, or whatever colour your, I was about to say buffer beam, which is the wrong thing, but your pilot is. So what I've got here is just some Vallejo model colour black paint. I think it's got quite a satin finish. And I'm literally just going to paint everything. The housing, the brackets, inside of the housing. I'm going to give that a coat of black paint. Okay. That's fairly straightforward. My paintbrush at wash. One of the good things about Vallejo paints is that they are water-based, so a bit of water cleans your brushes nicely. So the next thing that we need to look at is the housing, because the housing would be a metallic colour. So what I've got here is some Vallejo Air aluminium paint. Now, Vallejo Air is designed to use in an airbrush. Makes sense, this is called Vallejo Air, but it really does paint on quite nicely. So we just get this in the right position. We're just going to put that rogue hair that was on there and just very carefully paint the headlight lens housing. Hopefully you can see me doing that. It's a bit fiddly. There we go. And that just makes it stand out. a bit more paint on the inside because that makes the inside a bit more reflective. Now, the reason I painted it black first is that when we put the LEDs in here, you do get some light bleed through the plastic. And so just by painting it black and then by painting it silver just gives you that extra bit of coverage. So I'm just going to put that down and let that dry for a minute before we move on to fitting the LEDs. Okay, so the last thing that I've got to do is to fit the lenses or the LEDs and also make the lenses. So I'm going to start with the LEDs. So these are tiny, they're about 1 mm. They're kind of like, they're not quite bright white, but they're also not quite warm white. They might be bright white ones. I tend to, for more modern locos, go for the brighter LEDs. And you can get these packs of 10 on eBay. They come from China. Just zoom in there, you can see, you've probably seen loads of these. I know Larry Puckett uses these at varying different sizes. I think this is the smallest one that you can get. They come with a resistor wired to them, but I cut the resistors off because then I can standardize on what resistors I use, and I'll talk about that when we look at the actual wiring. And literally all you need to do is take the ends of these, the wired bare wire ends, and take your loco, poke them into the ditch light, and basically wiggle them around until you find the hole that you drilled. Okay, so start again. Take your bare wires. I tend to try and line them up a little bit because that just makes life easier. And poke them in, and hopefully now you'll find the hole and just thread them through. As you can see, look, they come out here. Pull them through, make sure you don't get tangled up with any other wires that you've got going on, and just pull it right in. And once you've done that, what I suggest is turn your body upside down, get a little bit of, I'm just using some decorator's tape, pull everything taut, and then just sellotape it to the inside of the body. Okay, so I've done it with that one, and I've done the same with the rear ditch lights. So we now have lights. And what I'm going to do, just to show to you this works, I have my LED tester. I'm just going to pick one of these ditch lights, crocodile clips. Oops, so many wires, it gets so tangled here and here. We'll grab it in a second. Oh look, we've got a bright ditch light. So that's that tested. All of the others have been done. And now what we're going to do is look at the lenses and how I make those. Now, you can buy molded plastic lenses and they're lovely and whatever, but hard for me to get hold of. So I use this stuff. It's called glue and glaze. You use it for gluing clear plastic, so that if there's any overspill, it doesn't show. But also you can make lenses with this. So I'm going to pour a little bit out onto this little tray. I'm going to do it with the back ones because the back ones were painted earlier and therefore have been drying for a lot longer. Take a toothpick, or as we call them in the UK, a cocktail stick. Pick up a blob and basically fill in your aperture. That will just slowly go in. Sometimes you want to do a couple of applications because you kind of want to fill the hole.
and leave that to dry. And that will take a couple of hours to dry, but it dries clear. And one of the good things about it is because it's kind of like a rubber solution, that if anything goes wrong with the ditch lights or the LEDs and you need to replace them, it's easy enough to pick it out, and it holds the LED in place. So there's no super glue involved. You're not going to have to break a bond if you need to replace one of the LEDs. It's very wonderful stuff, and I use it all the time for things like this. Here we go, and you can build it up so that you actually do get that kind of bulbous looking lens. So we're going to leave that to dry. I'll do the other end as well, and we'll come back and take a look at the results. Okay, so here we go. We've got the last little bit. The lenses have almost dried, and I've hooked all of the ditch lights up to my little tester. We just turn this around on my very dirty Lazy Susan. You can see all of the ditch lights here. Just focus that a bit better. There we go. All lit up. So I'd say that was pretty successful. Okay, that's it for this video. I hope you found it useful. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, then subscribe to the channel. It's absolutely free, and it does me a favor because it gets my visibility up with YouTube. When you do subscribe, a little bell's going to come up. Click it, press all, and you'll be notified of all my videos as they come out. Now, if you have any questions or any queries, please either post a comment below, or you can email me on this email address that's coming across the screen right now. You can also contact me via all of the social media sites. I'm very active on Facebook. I'm very active on Instagram. Not so active on Blue Sky, but make me do it. But thank you for watching. As I said, YouTube normally would suggest a video for you. I'm actually going to make it into the part of my 2790 refurb where you can see me wiring in the ditch lights and etc., because I think that deserves a video all to itself. But that's it for today. My name's Steve. I'm the British Railroader, and I am saying goodbye from my model railroad room. Bye bye.